Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Vanguard Knives Cheetah, which is made by Tuya. This is a very good looking and super utilitarian folding knife with a couple of quirks, but for the most part, an extremely good knife. I think very competitively priced. I'm going to go over all my thoughts. I will link this knife down in the description. By the time you're watching this video, I don't know what the availability is going to be, right? It'll probably come in and out of stock, but you can check there if you want to. It does help my channel and use those links, but that's entirely up to you. Thanks to Vanguard Knives for sending this in. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. And please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of this knife. Overall length of the Cheetah coming in at smaller than you might think, 7 3/4 inches. It really feels and looks like it's going to be about 8 inches overall. Not quite. 3 1/4 inches of blade and 3 1/4 inches of cutting edge. Very close. It's probably within like a 1/16 of an inch down there. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons. Any custom scales you find in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and Others. Up against the 8010 and the 8020.5. It's actually probably closer to the size of the 80. Yeah, it's definitely close to the size of 8020.5. Let's go ahead and put it up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3. Once again, probably close to the size of the smaller one here. And then finally, let's put it up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. How's the action? The action's very good, but it's also just a really satisfying knife to thumb stud deploy. The break of the detent on this, the positioning of the thumb stud, and the shape of the thumb stud are all perfect. Oh man, that is super satisfying to deploy. Same way with the reverse leg. It's just perfect, right? This is a big deal to me and to anybody who has handled a lot of knives. I have no idea, but I have a lot of uploads. If you've ever looked, I have a lot. I've handled a lot of knives. And with every new knife that I handle, I get more specific, more particular about where I want things placed. Now I have a really good idea. When it comes to a thumb stud knife, I got a really good idea of where I want that placed, right? Now this is all, I guess, relative to your experience and the size of your hand and muscle memory and all that, but I know it when I feel it. This is just perfect. The detent is also very, very good. Access to the lock bar is there. It's a tad sharp, right? It's kind of a sharp drop off right there, but it's there. And as long as you turn it and get your thumb out of the way, you'll be good. But there's no way to avoid, for the most part. I think you could get it right up at the top and get it into the sharpening tool. There's really no way to avoid the sharpened edge coming down, at least on your fingernail, just like that. So that's kind of a bummer, but not really that big of a deal because you can just turn it and get your finger out of the way. But yeah, deploying this thing is wonderful. It does run on bearings. We're probably not going to be able to see all the way in there, but it does run on bearings. So really, really awesome manipulation there. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. Thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. It's actually slightly thinner. Length and height up against the PM2 and the Para 3. This is an absolute joy in and out of the pocket. It doesn't take up any more room than the Para 3, but you get quite a bit more cutting edge for the amount of knife that you're carrying. I'll just show you right there. That's a lot. Really, really a nice experience considering you are carrying just about a full-size knife with a titanium frame. So yeah, not bad at all. Let's go ahead and weigh it. Get out my scale here. What are we looking at for materials? We are looking at titanium, carbon fiber inlays on both sides. And then we're looking, I don't know if it's actually going to say it anywhere, but we are looking at M390. Oh, well, it says it on the card right there. You can go to vanguardknives.com if you want to. Perhaps they have the HRC listed there. I just looked up what Tuya had done in the past. It was interesting. They had a couple of models that we're testing out at like 59 to 60, and then apparently they improved this, with that particular model and brought it up to 60 to 62. So I don't know if this is across the board now. My guess is at the very worst, because I think Tuya has had a reputation for at least being honest about their ranges. They've always listed their ranges on their own knives. My guess is at worst, we're hitting the industry standard, 59 to 61. I do not have the equipment to properly test the hardness of this. But it wasn't listed on any of the actual listings here, so I don't know. It is possible that, when they made the, hardness higher for that one model, they just started doing this for all of their M390 blades, in which case it would be somewhere around 60 to 62. Either way, not bad. Definitely would be better at the 60 to 62 range. But after using this, carrying it for a bit, cutting some basic things like cardboard, the edge didn't fatigue at all, right? So I would imagine it's at least that 5961. But the cutting geometry is very, very good. That's definitely assisting it there. Titanium carbon fiber, and then the M390 steel. And there is actually additional milling on the inside for weight reduction. Let's go ahead and weigh it. That model that I was referring to is the Tuya King. It's not the Kingsford, King Snake, something like that. I was reading about, went into blade forms and read about it. Anyways, 4.06 ounces. Yeah. So a little heavier than some people might have wanted, but certainly not what I would describe as heavy. Ratios aren't going to be perfect. Balance is going to be back away from the pivot, but not bad at all. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'm going to go ahead and get out my tools. My tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description. It talks about the tools I use in this channel, or the pinned comment is the other place I keep it, just because it's a little bit easier for some people. Pivot's going to be a T8, and then your body screws are entirely, within the pocket clip here. That's something that's really cool about this design. I think it's probably going to have, not floating, but they're just like pins sitting there holding the backspacer in place. But these two T6 screws back here, which almost certainly go all the way through to the frame. Not a big deal. That's what you're going to be removing in order to take this knife apart alongside the pivot. So incredibly minimal hardware, even though we do have some T6 in there, which isn't ideal. Not only is it going to be easy to disassemble, but it looks good. Like, that looks really, really good with no fasteners or anything like that showing. So yeah, I like that a lot. Last thing, let's go ahead and measure the blade stock thickness. Blade stock thickness on this guy coming in at 130. Yeah, 135 thousandths. That's going to be literally the middle of the road for the knife world. All right, meat and potatoes time. What a good looking knife. It does look like the Sebenza, definitely. The Sebenza has very, very classic knife lines. A lot of people will say, the blade in particular, right? I can hear it now. The blade is a copy of the Sebenza blade. I got to stop you right there. The Sebenza blade is one of the most classic and used blades, right? In terms of designs, like modern designs or designs from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago. That blade shape probably exists on more models than any other. I mean, it's like the classic drop point blade. And while the Sebenza blade itself, right, it's recognizable not just because of the drop point configuration, but because of everything else about the knife, right? I think it's the whole package that makes it iconic. And then people think, when you see a blade like this, that it's a copy of the Sebenza blade. No, it is not. Factually, they don't own this blade shape, right? But the rest of it, right? If you're saying like the whole knife kind of reminds you of the Sebenza, I agree. It does. It's not exactly the same, right? But it's like kind of the essence. It wouldn't surprise me if this knife design was inspired, right? It is not a line-for-line copy. That's when it's a problem, right? When something looks kind of like something else that's not really a copy. What people take issue with in this community is when it is a line-for-line copy, which this absolutely is not. But for me, it's kind of everything that I want the Sebenza to be. You guys know I have a huge collection of knives, and I've given my thoughts on like every major influential model that's existed over the last 2 decades at least. I don't own a Sebenza because I don't really like that knife. The hydraulic action or whatever, it's not really for me. I don't love the thumb studs. I don't love the handle. I don't love the lock bar. I don't really love how the knife looks, right? And a lot of people consider that blasphemy, that apparently I'm supposed to love that knife because I'm a knife person, a knife personality. I'm used to. I don't. But I do like this. I like that the blade is substantially easier to manipulate, right? Even if, some people say, well, that's the trade-off, the benefit of the washers and the Sebenza keeps the debris out of the pivot. Great. I prefer the way that this manipulates so much, right? Also, I love that there's no hardware here. I love the carbon fiber. Pocket clip's okay. It's nice and short, right? Certainly don't notice it very much while I'm gripping this, choking up on it or whatever. I like the jimping back here. Love the crown spine. That's definitely an element there that makes me think of the Sebenza blade. Just really love that. I also love the hand rub satin finish on the blade. I think that's really nice. The edge gets reasonably thin. It's very easy to cut and do knife things, right? The inlay is pretty nice. I will point this out though. It is lipped up over here slightly, which is a bummer. On this side, everything looks pretty good, but I don't like to see that, not so much. Everything else, though, fit and finish all the way around was very, very good. When they do this flat, I really wish that they had contoured this, right? The carbon fiber is cool, but, the more I look at it, the more it's like, it kind of looks cheap. It's just because it's just a flat piece of carbon fiber. When it's contoured, this pattern isn't so uniform. It kind of, it almost looks like it's stretching it out a little bit, and it gives variation to the pattern and allows the light to hit it differently, and it just looks a lot better. Contoured or rounded carbon fiber seems to always look a lot better to me. That's very subjective. Another thing that I don't like is how sharp this pivot is. I think that's just the case with Tuya knives in general, but this pivot, the edges almost feel unfinished, and it kind of bothers me. There's no real billboarding on the front. On the back, it says Vanguard Cheetah. I think it's fine if they wanted to put their logo, right? Literally just that grouping of V's. But having to spell out Vanguard Cheetah, I don't like that. I always say it's a lot like when somebody puts the name of their car on the windshield. It already says the name of your car, really small for people who really want to look for it on the bumper, right? And you have the manufacturer logo in the grill. And, hey, listen, if it's your vehicle, if let's say right now you're like, hey man, I drive a Camaro that says Camaro on the windshield. How dare you? You don't need my permission to like that. I'm just letting you know when I see that go down the street, I think that looks incredibly stupid. It says Camaro on the windshield of the Camaro. It's so dumb to me. But again, I didn't buy it, right? You bought it. You bought the sticker. You put it on the windshield. It's your property. Do whatever you want. I just think it looks bad. That's what it makes me think of, right? This is kind of the windshield of the knife. And so when we have the name of the knife on the blade that we bought after, assuming we knew that, right, when we bought it, I don't need to be reminded what the name of it is, right? But the logo I think is fine. I think it's okay to put a little bit of branding on there. But I love how the front of the knife looks so much. It's so clean. You flip it over here and you're like, oh, So yeah, that's my thoughts there. I do appreciate the jimping is actually functional. It's amazing to me in 2024 how many knives are releasing with kind of useless jimping, right? I mean, the 80-20i here, which I use a lot, has essentially useless jimping. Come on, why? There's no traction there whatsoever. It's infinitely more frustrating considering the earlier version, the smaller, earlier 80-20.5 has functional jimping on it. Just geez, it's not like the recipe for jimping is confusing, we've had it figured out for a bit. But anyways, super long backspacer. Not sure what the point of that was. Maybe just to keep you, no, even then, you can see there where the sharpened portion is, it still wouldn't be high enough for you to really touch it. So I don't know why they did that. I guess it looks kind of cool. It just makes the knife that much heavier. The pocket clip is all right. It's milled, right? It's a little, like a big bump underneath. But it does go in and out of the pocket fairly easily. No lefty option, which is a bummer. Creating a lefty option would mean they would need something down here, which would have kind of killed the aesthetic, right? The aesthetic they're going for is clearly minimalism right here. So yeah, it's a bummer. Something I didn't really touch on enough. Well, I guess I did. I said that the crown spine, right, it makes me think of the Sebenza, but I just want to touch on that again. That is a really nice touch. Really like that. You can't, throw sparks with the flint or anything, because it's not a sharp edge up there. But, for me or people who don't do that, they probably won't mind. The retention on this clip it's very tight. It's very pinchy, but it does work, and in and out of the pocket with one hand is just fine. The stop pin is located right there. No shouldering or anything like that, but it's not necessarily needed. There's no blade play up, down, left, or right. There's no lock stick. There's no, actually, you know what? I'm feeling it. Yeah, there actually is a little bit of pivot lash on this, which is slightly disappointing. Does that affect the functionality of the knife long term? No. It's something that I do just to see how tight the tolerances are. Sometimes this can vary from knife to knife within a certain product line. Sometimes it means that all of them are like that. But there is a little tiny bit of play, which is a bummer. I always like to feel that completely and totally tight, but it's not going to affect the knife over time. The detent is great, and there's no detent lash. It's also just slightly off center. That might be because I was flipping it. I wonder if I could give that pivot just a quick turn and see. And if not, then, that'll be a bummer, but at least we'll know, Let's go ahead and do that real quick. No, that one's tight. How about this one? Does this one need a little bit? That one got it a little bit. Did it bring that blade over at all? If it is off, it's ever so slightly leaning to this side, but not by much. Action's still just about the same. So this is a really cool knife. I like it. It's like I said, it's got a couple of corks, right? Lock bar could be not so sharp. The pivot, it could be not so sharp. I wish this was contoured, right? That'd up the cost. I really wish they didn't have the branding here. I wish they had left the option, right? Overall, though, very good. These are all little complaints. Truthfully, my experience carrying this was very good. It felt like carrying a really, really fancy tool, right? Which is, if you're paying this much money for a pocket knife, that is exactly how it should feel. You should be carrying something that functions as the tool it is meant to be, but it also makes you feel cool because it's more fancy, right? I mean, anybody can go. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this, but yeah, most people just go buy a $20 pocket knife and call it good, right? But if you're watching my videos, you're probably bored with that stuff or not interested in it. You want something more special, even if it does function essentially the exact same way as the cheap ones. So yeah, that's what it's how it made me feel, right? It's a fancy cutting tool, and it cut the cardboard the same way that any knife would. It felt good. I mean, it felt like a well thought out blade, I guess. I don't say any knife with proper geometry, I guess, but it felt good. It was fun to deploy. It was, satisfying to deploy. It was convenient to deploy, put away, put back in my pocket. It did everything that I needed to do. So these little complaints, I can't say they bothered me too much, right? I'm also not super upset with the price tag. I noticed that Blade HQ, at least at one point, had these at $230. I think the sold out listing still says $230. So I don't know if they were $230 for a bit and then they bumped it up to $250. $250 is okay. $230 would have been a lot better. But if you can find one of these for $250, I don't think it's a bad buy. I think for the most part, you'll like it. I would love to see a version 2 of this knife that is vastly updated, because I think what they have here is a recipe for a really, really great knife if some of these little tiny things are changed. So that's my thought. Generally speaking, this is a recommendable knife. I like it. I think it's really cool. I think you will too. Links for this down in the description. Like I said, may or may not be available. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.